So I have 10:15, so we will go ahead and get started and hope some more people log on as they are able to. For those of you that are here, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Tomkins, and I direct the GEAR UP program at North High School. And I'd like to thank you for joining us once again. With me today are my GEAR UP crew that are helping with questions and technical stuff and anything else that comes up. This session is being recorded, and so we will post it on our YouTube channel. So if you need to watch it again, if there's something you missed or you want to check back on, or if you want to tell your friends that aren't here to log in, they can find us on that YouTube channel. And the link for that is in our Google Classroom. So today we're going to be talking about creating and using your FSA ID. So before we talk about that, we have to back up real quick and talk about what an FSA ID is. And that is the way that you are going to sign your FAFSA, because your FAFSA is online. So to back up briefly, I want to say in about 2 weeks, we're going to have a seminar just on FAFSA alone. So I'm not going to get too deep into that today. But in case you don't know what it is, your FAFSA is your free application for federal student aid. So it's the first stop in the financial aid process if you want grants, loans, and scholarships. In order to complete this FAFSA, you have to sign it, as I said, and you sign it with the FSA ID that you create. So that's what we're talking about right now, and we're going to help you get that part done. So as I said before, it's the way that you sign and log into your FAFSA. You're going to use it every year, and it is yours for the lifetime of your student loans. So every year when you renew your FAFSA, you're going to use this FSA ID. If you go to grad school and you need new loans, again, you will still use this FSA ID. So it's very important that you don't lose it. So does my parent need an FSA ID? Yes, for the most part. So you're going to need one to sign it. But if you're what's considered a dependent student, your parent, one of your parents, is also going to need to create one of these FSA IDs. So again, we're going to talk more about this in a couple of weeks, but I do want to just point out that the answers that you provide on your FAFSA are going to determine whether you're dependent or you're independent. And there are many qualifiers to become an independent student. This includes if you have a child that receives more of half of their income and support that comes from you. If at any time since age 13, both of your parents were deceased, you were in foster care or ward or dependent of the court. If you're an emancipated minor or in legal guardianship as determined by a court, or if you are an unaccompanied youth who's homeless or self-supporting. So a homeless child or youth not in physical custody of a parent is what that means. These must be legal documents. So if you don't live with your parents simply because you had a fight and there were no court papers and you just are living with an aunt or a friend, unfortunately, FAFSA is still going to consider you a dependent student. So any time that you're independent, you need to have that supporting documentation, the court papers, anything from DCF. Have that ready to go, because after you submit the FAFSA, your college will call and ask, or not call, they'll probably email you and ask you to verify that and provide those papers. So if you're independent, you are the only one that's creating this FSA ID. For everybody else, which is the vast majority of the students that we work with, both you and a parent have to create one. You each need to have your own email address. And if you or your parent does not have a social security number, you're not going to be able to create an FSA ID. It's possible that you may not qualify for federal aid if you don't have a social security number, but some colleges, if you're applying for a scholarship, will still require you to fill out the FAFSA. So in that case, what you would do is you would print out the form, physically sign it, and mail it in. We'll talk more about that in a couple weeks.
Darren, sorry to interrupt you. We have a question.
Yes.
We have a question from Jasmine, and she said, if I have a sibling who went to college, would my parent ID be the same?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that, Jasmine. So if your parent has already created one for another sibling, yes, then they've already got it and you don't have to worry about it. You only have to worry about your own. Okay? That was a great question. Thank you. So how do we create this FSA ID? I pulled the slides, this slideshow. These slides come, not this one, but the ones you're about to see come directly from the Financial Aid Toolkit website because I wanted you to see what it looks like when you log in. So the first thing you're going to do is go to studentaid.gov/FSAID, and it's going to look like this. And you're going to click on that box, that circle that says Create FSA ID Now. Here, you're going to put in your email and you're going to create a username and a password. And the password cannot contain your name or your birth date. If you do try to use that, when you get to the second page, it's going to tell you that's not okay. It's going to make you go back. So you're going to create the username and password and then confirm the password. You can see this little box down here where it says show text. So you can see exactly what you're typing. So you can make sure you type it the same way both times. And then I want you to take your phone out and take a picture of it, print it out, do whatever you need to do to put it in a safe place so that when you do complete your FAFSA, you're going to have that information ready to go and you're not going to have to waste time trying to find it. Or next year when you're renewing your FAFSA, you're going to need this again. It's unlikely you're going to remember in a year from now what you created. So make sure you take a picture on your phone, put it in a very safe place. I have, for my child who just graduated from high school, we had a notebook. So we had all of the passwords in there, and I can just grab that notebook whenever we need to jump onto College Board or FAFSA, and we can see what our passwords were. So I would recommend that you do the same.
Taryn, we have another question.
Sure.
From Tavion, and they said, do we use our personal email or school email?
Another great question. You can use either, but I would recommend using your personal email because when you graduate from school, that Worcester Public School email will no longer be yours. So then it's going to create a step where you have to go back to FSA ID and modify it and change the email. So it's a lot easier if you just use your own personal email right from the beginning. So the next page after you create your username and password is where you're going to put your social security number and your birthday and your name. Now I do want to point out that your name, it must be your legal name that matches your social security card. So if you happen to have your social security card and you want to take a quick look at it as you type that in, that would be the best. I bring this up because we have a lot of students that have more than one name, but don't always use them. So if my legal name is Taryn Tomkins Smith, but I just go by Taryn Tomkins, and I just put Taryn Tomkins in here when I'm creating it, it's going to not be a match when this information goes to Social Security because I didn't use my legal name, which was Taryn Tomkins Smith. So if you're not sure what your legal name is, if you have more than one last name, grab your social security card and type that name in just as it appears.
We have someone who just raised their hand. Let me see here, 1 second. Give me 1 second. Someone just, oh, Vector was the one who just raised his hand.
Victor, you made it in this week. I'm so happy.
Vector, do you have a question to ask? You can type it in the chat and then I'll read your question. Okay, so one person asks, what if I don't have a social security number?
So if you don't have a social security number, I would recommend that you reach out to your counselor, your GEAR Up or your talent search counselor at school to see why. If it's because you're undocumented, for example, then that's going to preclude you from being able to receive federal aid. if there's another situation where you have a social security number, but you're just not sure what it is, or it's in process, there are a lot of situations, some of which can be really complicated. So I think it's easier for you to reach out individually to your ETS or GEAR UP counselor so that we can help you navigate that. Again, though, even if you are undocumented and you're applying for scholarships, there are some that might still have you fill this FAFSA out. So you would fill it out, and then you would hit the print, you would print it out, you would sign it, and you would mail it in. It's not going to be possible to create this form without a social security number.
Okay.
So the last page was just where you put that social security, birth date, and name in. And then it's just going to have you look over it and confirm and make sure that you got everything right. And I want you to make sure that you double check that your birthday is correct. You'd be surprised how many people miss a number by accident, and it creates problems down the line. So go through every line, make sure everything looks good, and you can hit continue when it does.
All right, Terrence, sorry to interrupt you again.
Oh, sure.
We have two questions that are the same. So one is from Victor, and he asked, what is the website we use to create our ID for FAFSA? And then the other question was basically the same.
Okay, so that was on the very first slide. I could probably, let me see if I can go back if people want to take a picture.
I think we also put it in the chat.
Yeah, it'll be in the chat for them.
studentaid.gov/FSA ID. All right, so they're going to put that in the chat for us.
Okay.
And so after you do that, you come to the challenge questions. So you're going to create a challenge question and you're going to answer. A lot of them, I believe that there's a drop-down menu for the first couple, and then you might have to create your own. In any case, I also recommend taking a picture of this. Once you select your challenge questions and the answers, take a picture, because you would be amazed at how many people forget what the answers are. If my grandma, and I used a capital when I created it, but a year later, I remember my answer was grandma, but I'm using a lowercase and it's not working, and I'm saying, what the heck? I know that was my answer. So take a picture so that you can type that challenge question in exactly as you need it. This is going to come into play if you lose your login information, and if you want to reset your password, they're going to ask you what your challenge questions are. So it is important. Ignore, if you're going back and looking at this, ignore question 5. They no longer require a significant date. We tried to be very clever and put a little animated guy over question 5, and then I realized that it was in the narrative on the right, so we didn't quite get away with it. But you no longer have to do that, because you now have to verify your email and your cell phone, and we're going to get to that very shortly. So for the purposes of this presentation, and if you go back and look at it, don't worry about what question 5 says. Okay, once you put in your challenge questions, once again, they're going to ask you to just review everything that you typed in and certify that the answers that you've given and the information is true. That's at the very bottom. You click that little box and you hit continue. And then we come to a very, very important part in this process, and that is verifying your email and your cell phone. Again, the reason that you do this is because if in a year, when you go to renew your FAFSA, you can't find what you did with your username and your password, the recovery is very, very simple. If you have taken the time to verify your email and your cell phone, they will send you a code and you'll be able to get in, you'll be able to reset, see what you're doing. If you skip this process, it's going to take you a lot longer to figure out how to get in. So once you hit that continue button, you're going to log into your emails and you're going to see an email with a code, and there's a picture at the bottom where it says your FSA email validation. You're going to get that in your email, and you're going to take that code and you're going to type it up top where it says secure code. And then you're going to hit continue. When you do that, you're going to receive a text on your email from the same people, FSA ID. It'll say something like action is required. You'll get a code on your phone. You're going to type it in the same place and hit continue. Then you've just verified to them that the email address and the cell phone you provided are actually you. And that's it. Your FSA ID is created once you do all of that. If you have your email and your social security and everything all set when you sit down, this process shouldn't take you more than 5 or 10 minutes. It's pretty quick and easy. So you can log into your FAFSA after that, and then you can sign it. So what will happen after you create this is that this information you provided is going to go to the Social Security Administration, and they're going to verify your Social Security number and your name and everything that you put. And if there's a problem, so for example, like I said, you accidentally put the wrong birthday or you didn't include your full name, you're going to get an email from Social Security Administration saying, hey, we have a problem. It didn't match. And so you're going to have to read it, go back in and try to figure out what you put in that didn't match. And again, you can reach out to us to help you with that if that happens. That usually takes about 1 to 3 days. And once it's verified, you're good to go. So, do we have any questions? Any more questions?
This isn't a question, Taryn, but just I just want to make sure that they're aware when you do create your ID, that does not mean your financial aid is finished.
Yes.
I know a lot of students think this is all you have to do and then you're all set. This is just getting you guys an ID so that you can log in to start your FAFSA. This does not mean that your FAFSA is all set. So when you're done with this, you don't have to put it on the back burner. This is just so you can log in and start your FAFSA.
It's a great point, and it's one that we saw quite a few times last year. The students did this and they thought, okay, good, I'm all set, my FAFSA's done. And that is not the case. Your FSA ID is done so that now you're ready to sign your FAFSA after you do it. But the FAFSA is definitely not done with just doing this. And again, I believe in 2 weeks, we're going to be logging back on and talking about FAFSA specifically. So if you haven't done your FAFSA yet, definitely make sure that you join us again. Does any of my team have any other points like Steve's of something I might have missed or something that you want to add? Does anybody have any questions that's listening?
Oh, we have a question from Jasmine. So she said, after doing all the steps, how would we link our FAFSA to a scholarship?
So what might happen, and it can vary, but what we've seen typically is if a scholarship wants your FAFSA, they're going to ask you to print it out. And why am I? Student aid report. So once you complete your FAFSA, you're going to see when you log in something that says print out your student aid report or your SAR. And so they will either ask you to email it or print it and attach it with your scholarship application. So that's something that would happen after FAFSA was completed. You don't put in a scholarship when you're filling out FAFSA. You will put in the schools that you want that information to go to, but the scholarship piece will come after. Any other questions? Any other questions about anything else that's not FAFSA related while you're here and you have all of these advisors and their brains here ready to help you?
Okay, Jamal said not yet. Still thinking.
Well, I do want to thank all of you that took the time in your free period to log in. This is such important stuff. Know that we're here to help you. We are an email away. So please reach out to us if you have any problems, any questions, you need any help. We're here. We are still working even though we're not in school, and we are committed to helping you get all of this stuff done. So be sure to reach out. If you're at North, that can be through the Google Classroom. We've done a lot of marketing to share our contact information, but if you missed all of it and you don't know any of it, you can reach out to your guidance counselor and they can give you our contact information. And make sure that you tune in every Monday. Every Monday we have a different topic that's going to help you. Does anybody here remember what next week is off the top of their head?
Give me 1 second. I'll check for you.
Okay. We have Monday seminars scheduled every Monday at 10:15 through the Thanksgiving break and possibly after. We'll have to see. At this point, we're only going through the end of November, and we'll see what we still have left to talk about. I'm sure there will be a whole new set of things that we can be talking about in December.
So it's going to be on the common application and college applications, it says.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next week, Common App and college applications. The week after that, FAFSA. So we hope to see you back here next Monday, 10:15. Thank you so much, everyone.
We have one more question from
good.
Jasmine. Sorry.
All right.
I just saw it. Give me 1 second, pull it up here. She asked, how would I go about how would I go about emailing a school, because I've heard that getting in contact with colleges can help when they're considering your application.
Okay.
One thing I would suggest is Google the school and admissions staff. Just put that in you're going to get the page right with the admission staff. You can look up the admission staff for Worcester, and that way you'd be able to email that particular admission staff directly. I actually have a senior myself, and that's what we were doing last night, just Googling the school, admission staff, and voila, we had a whole list of all the admission staff, and we could look and see what location, which admission staff serviced, in my case, Leominster, but in your case, Worcester, and that way you'd be able to email them directly.
And just to add to that, I always tell my students as well, you want to look for a name. You don't want to really do like admissions at their school. You just want to find someone that you directly can talk to and keep in contact with that person. So if you come back in a week and you want to ask another question, you want to go to that same advisor, because since we're doing a lot of things virtually, it's not really feasible to see the advisor, but at least if they see your name coming up a few times, they know you're interested, and that'll keep their name and your name in the back of their head.
And
it really does go a long way.
As Steve says, it'll help create that demonstrated interest that we talked about. Not every school does that. Like I was just looking last night, and MIT, they don't even have, their advisors cover everybody. There's no particular advisor for location, and they said that they don't have the whole demonstrated interest, but other schools do. So if you're going back and forth with the advisor for Worcester, that'll help keep your name in their mind. And even if they don't have demonstrated interest as one of the things that they look at, they'll still be remembering, oh, Jamal from Worcester has emailed me and asked me some really good questions. So they're going to remember you when they're looking at your application.
Great answers.
We just have a nice little positive feedback from Robert, and he said, great job with a quick, simple overview of the FSA ID.
Thank you, Robert.
And I do want to say, when you guys do your FSA ID, it'll prompt you to start your FAFSA if you want to do that. If you feel comfortable doing it, at least starting it, you can. You could at least do the student part. You don't have to go into the parent part. And then again, like Taryn said, there's a lot of advisors. So if you guys want to make an appointment with one of us, you can. There's about 5 of us at North. So we'll put our information, and then you can reach out to your talent search advisors or your guidance counselors. So if you do want to start, you can hop on a Zoom, we can do a share screen, and we can walk through it step by step if you're more comfortable doing that.
And as I said before, if for some reason you're not sure who your GEAR Up advisor is or your talent search advisor, you can always reach out to your guidance counselor. They know that information and they can get it to you. Okay, well, I think with no other questions, I want to thank you again for logging in. Looking forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place, and reach out if you need us. Thank you, everybody.